you prove that you could trade one setup consistently, and you prove to yourself that, okay, I can make a career out of this setup. Let me start sizing this up. So it just, your first year, I would say that is a learning process, and you shouldn't be losing more than you have the ability to make on one day.
Welcome to another episode of Tradervue Conversations, a podcast done with real traders sharing their knowledge and experiences. I'm your host, Richard Dalder, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. All right. Hello, Justin. Welcome to the first edition of Tradervue Conversations. We're happy to have you here. How are you? How's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Rich.
Good to know. Such a pleasure having you here. Super excited about that. So yeah, let's get started. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did everything started for you? How did you start trading?
Yeah, sure. So I think, well, I would have to start back in high school, maybe when I was about 15 or 16. I had some investors in my family, and that's what first got me interested in stocks. And that kind of like sparked my curiosity. And then from there, I decided after I graduated high school to go to college for finance to learn a little bit more about the market and see what kind of careers were out there. While I was in college, I started trading Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which was back in 2017, 2016. So I got started early on that. And from there, I kind of joined the investment club at my college, and I started trading weekly options. And that didn't go too well for me, but I started getting more involved in trading. And then one day, Mike Bellafiore came into the investment club and he did a presentation. And I knew right away, this is what I want to do. I want to go work at SMB. And I got Mike Bellafiore's email. We started chatting, and a couple months later, I went through an interview process at SMB, and I got the job as an intern. And I was going to college, I was working on the weekends, and I was also commuting to the city. So my schedule was packed out, but I interned at SMB for 2 semesters. And then from there, I got a full-time offer to become a developing trader on the desk. And that was in fall of 2018. And I've been there since.
Wow, really interesting. And so let's start from the beginning a little bit. Tell us about, well, first of all, I already know, but for the watchers, for the listener, who Mike Bellafiore is and SMB, what it's all about.
Sure. So Mike Bellafiore is the co-founder of SMB Capital, which is a proprietary trading desk located in Manhattan. What they specialize in is training new traders, and they train them to become consistently profitable traders.
Okay, perfect.
And he's also the author of a couple of trading books that you might have heard of.
Yeah, One Good Trade, The Playbook, really good books. For those of you viewing and listening, make sure to check out those books by Mike Bellafiore. And so walk us a little bit through your first year or so in being like going from out of college to, or not out of college, but while being in college, like during your intern in SMB, like what things were you learning during that beginner stage?
Sure. So as an intern, basically I commuted into the city 3 times a week, and I would spend my day with the developing traders there. And basically the developing traders, they were going through a training process for the first year. And every day they would have to go to a series of meetings throughout the week. So for instance, there was the AM meeting where the developing traders would go into the conference room with Mike and Carlton is the risk manager at SMB. And they would share their ideas. We would go around the room and share ideas. And as an intern, I got to share one idea myself. And then they would go back to their seats and they would trade until about 11:30. Then at 11:30, we would go into the conference room and discuss our morning. Each person would talk about a trade that they took, and they would receive feedback from Mike and the risk manager. And then later on in the day, we would have another meeting, which would be called a reading the tape meeting. So each of us would record our screens, record the level 2, the time and sales, one of the charts, and we would go back and we would review tape on a breakout trade. So say there was a higher time frame technical level and the stock was breaking out, we would all take a look and review that tape, and do an analysis on what the tape looked like when it got above. What the offers look like? What the bids look like? What did it look like when the offers were decrementing? And we would talk about that. And then after the close, one of the senior traders would go to the conference room and the senior trader would review his day, what he traded, why he traded it, how he traded a stock setup. So it's a rigorous training process your first year. And that's kind of what my day looked like as an intern. And because I was participating and making sure I stood out, I was able to come back and get a job as a developing trader.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like and correct me if I'm wrong, but sounds like there is a lot of like teamwork involved, like in terms of preparation and also reviewing. So is that something that you get like one of the advantages of being part of a prop firm such as SMB?
Absolutely. It's a huge advantage at our firm because you start, and we call it a class. So it's a class of developing traders. You go through the training process for about a year, year and a half, and then you're placed on a team, and the team is led by a 7-figure or 8-figure trader who's been trading for a decade or so. And you trade within that team, and there are junior traders on the team. So SMB, it's really a team environment, and everyone learns from one another. So that's a huge part of it. I think that's what makes SMB different.
Nice. Yeah, which actually leads me to my next question. Like, can you tell us like some of the advantages of being in a prop firm such as SMB, like other than like working with a team?
Right. So that's it's a huge advantage. So I think a lot of retail traders, people that are trading at home, hear the statistic that 90% of all traders fail. But that's just not the case when you're at a prop firm like SMB, because we have so many resources. So for instance, the biggest thing was going through that training program the first year and getting constant feedback from not only the risk manager that oversees everyone's trading, but also Mike Bellafiore, who's been trading for 20, 30 years and also training new traders. And then other than that, you're sitting alongside someone who's making 8 figures a year trading stocks, and you're able to pick their brain. And eventually you're placed on a team where you have 7, 8, 9, 10 traders at your disposal, and you're all sharing ideas and talking amongst one another every day. I think there's many advantages. And another big one is we also have one of the best trading psychologists on the street, and his name is Dr. Steenbarger. So we're able to meet with him and talk to him about once a week or whenever we feel that we need to. And that's a huge help. He has a ton of experience working with portfolio managers on Wall Street. So he's a very valuable resource and a huge help to all the traders at SMB. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a good environment to be like developing as a trader. But let's go a little bit back into your learning curve. So you did spend
Sure.
like a year as an intern or so, and then when you were hired to to become a developing trader and to then become a professional trader, how did things change from intern to, to more like an official position as a trader? And what practices or what things were you doing at that time that you were not doing before?
So I think I was doing a lot of the same things as I was as an intern, as a developing trader, but it was just taken to a more serious level now that, okay, this is my definite career path. And instead of going into the office twice or three times a week, I was there from 7 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m., 5 times a week. And I would just say that it was a lot more rigorous. And, you once you start trading live, you realize, okay, I'm not going to be driving a Lamborghini in a year because this is a lot harder than it seems. And that was another big thing to get through because I remember at one point, I guess it was, I don't know, 8 months in or 10 months in, where I really considered quitting. Um, and it was hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel, but I loved it so much that I said, all right, I know that I have to give this at least 2 years. And even though I'm losing money every day, I know that if I trust the process and I work hard, um, I'll become consistently profitable. And that's kind of exactly what happened.
Nice. How long have you been trading now?
I've been trading full time. This is year 4, so
Okay.
a little over, yeah.
Okay. And so I wanted to ask you, like, during what year, or how much until you started to become like consistently profitable, and kind of you know went through that point in which you start to see some progress in your trading.
Yeah. So my first year, I was really, and we were encouraged to try all different kinds of setups. So we were learning a lot of different setups and we were trying them all. Um, and really, at the end of my first year, um, and I owe a lot of my success to Tradervue. Um, I import my trades every day, and I look at the stats. Even now, I do that rigorously. So at the end of my first year, I think I had like 1,200 trades for the whole year, and I was looking at my different tagged trades, and I said, "Look, there's really out of the 10 types of setups that I'm taking, there's two things that I'm making some money on. There's two trades that my win rate is 55% on. And my average winner to loser is 2 to 1 or close to 2 to 1. I said, let me just focus on these two setups. And I'm not going to trade unless I see these two setups. Another big thing was if I lost money in the morning or there wasn't a trade in the morning, I would try to make that up in the afternoon. And anyone who has been trading for a while knows that trading in the afternoon is just like it's low volume and stocks tend to chop around after the
Mm-hmm.
morning. So I stopped trading from 12 to 2, and I only traded if I saw those two setups. Then I started to get consistent and I started building just those two businesses. And once I felt confident with those two trade setups, which were backside trades and I believe higher time frame uh, breakouts.
Mm-hmm.
Once I was confident with those two setups and I was making money and I my P&L curve started to look like a nice slope, I started trying other setups and started studying other setups. And it was important to trade those other setups with small size so they didn't affect my core businesses, which were the backside trades and the breakout trades. So that's how it worked out for me. You know, I went from revenge trading and trading all day long and, you know, trading stocks that didn't even have like a real setup to, okay, like if I'm going to do this for a living, I need to make some rules. I need to follow rules and I need to do what I do well. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's really interesting. I'm like super, I'm glad that you were able to find some value out of the Tradervue tool. I myself, as a developing trader, also have found some like interesting stats, and understanding your niche and your edge. I think it's really key, especially at the beginning. A lot of what you mentioned a few minutes ago, kind of reminds me that during the initial stage, it's super important to kind of, just be able to stay in the game and survival. That's kind of the first aim during the first year or so, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
That is huge. And my first year, I dug myself into a deep hole. And once I finally started becoming consistent and, you know, I saw a couple green months, I actually wasn't getting paid because I was busy digging myself out of that hole I created. So survival is a big part of it. And any new class that starts at SMB, I always tell them, you know, you might have, you know, your stop might be X, but you should really only be willing to risk 20% of your stop until you're showing some consistency. And I think, you know, a big thing is that a lot of new traders, they want to see that big P&L on the screen. They want to make the big bucks, but they just don't have the skill set to do that yet. And while you're training, it doesn't make sense to lose. It doesn't make sense to lose more than you have the ability to make. So for instance, if there is a new trader, you know, they fund their account and they say they're going to risk $500 a day. Their max stop is $500. And after they're trading for a couple months, you know, their average winning day looks like $150. But on a bad day, they're losing $400, $500. That doesn't make sense. You should only be risking what you have the ability to make until, you know, you find your bearings and you find what you do well, and you prove that you could trade one setup consistently, and you prove to yourself that, okay, I can make a career out of this setup. Let me start sizing this up. So your first year, I would say that is a learning process, and you shouldn't be losing more than you have the ability to make on one day.
Awesome. No, yeah, that's definitely a really good, with some really good comments around that. And so let's get adjusting a little bit more into your edge as of now, or your strategy. How would you best describe your edge at the moment?
That is a really good question. I think my edge really lies in being able to adapt to the market and what's working. So for instance, you know, 2020, 2021, the market was kind of just going straight up, right? After the pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
So during that time, breakout trades were working. Buying the dip was definitely working. And you see traders now that we've come into this period of volatility since really the start of 2022, they're still trying to take those trades. There's a lot of people I see, whether it's on Twitter, whatever it is, they're still trying to trade breakouts and they're still buying the dip and they're getting crushed. So I would say my edge is being able to recognize what is working in the current market environment, studying what's working, and being able to adapt my trading to that. So I remember in the beginning of the year, or maybe it was right before the new year, 2022, we had a really great breakout trade in Ford. And I did really well. And that was my only breakout trade so far this year, because after that, the market completely changed. And from there, I said, okay, well, there's definitely a shift in the market. So let me look to see what trades are working and let me study those trades. Okay, the market is down 3% in a day, but if it pops up into this resistance level, this previous support level that's becoming resistance, I think it'll be a good short. And I've seen that happen, that same trade happened last week. So, that's something I'm going to try this week with small size. And if it works, I'll start sizing that trade up. So I really think my edge lies in being able to adapt to what's working in the market. And I also think my edge lies in thinking about the psychology of what's going on in a stock. So if I'm trading on the long side or I'm trading on the short side, I like to think, what's the person on the other side of this trade thinking? What are the bears thinking? And an example of that would be, we recently had this low float that was up 5 days in a row on no news. I noticed on Twitter that the ticker was gaining a lot of traction. Everyone was talking about it. Every time you refresh Twitter, there was a new tweet about the stock. So I know it's gaining the attention of retail traders, and I know that, hey, stock's up 300% in a week and a half. It doesn't belong up here. I think there's going to be a short soon. Now the stock, it put in a resistance level. It went from, I think, around $1 to $4.50, and it couldn't get above this 450, and it tested 450, I think 4 or 5 times throughout the day. And the next day, it got above that level and then immediately got slammed down. So right away, my thought process was, okay, I know retail thinks that this is going to continue squeezing another couple 100%. I don't think that's possible. And, the mere fact that it got above that important resistance level and got slammed down on high volume, I know that breakout traders are trapped. People that were buying for a short squeeze are trapped. Anyone buying calls, there was options for this ticker. They're wrong. And that is what's going to fuel that backside move, that down move. So I think a big thing is also thinking about the psychology of what's happening, not just looking at technical levels, resistance and support, but thinking about what's actually happening.
Yeah, it's really, that's really interesting. Knowing, who you're trading against, and knowing where they are, how they what are they feeling, in terms of the trade that might be happening. Or I think that's super interesting what you're just mentioning there, Justin. And so you did mention a couple minutes ago about one of your edge being on being able to identify when the market conditions are changing. So, and that's actually a really interesting subject, because very recently, I know it's not exact science, but I can say that since December, since the word transitory change from the central banks in the U.S., things started, in my eyes, things started to change drastically. And so what I'm trying to say is that we started to enter into a more volatile market. Also, the Russia-Ukraine geopolitical tensions started as well. So it's a very different market conditions from 2020, 2021. And so what is your take on adapting to times when your strategy goes out of style? Like you mentioned a lot of traders kind of struggling, in Twitter and kind of trying to do the old type of trading when, things were kind of rallying, but no longer works. Like what would you suggest traders like struggling with this, and especially in this, bear market, or well, you can call it kind of like a bear market and high volatility market. What would you suggest to them?
To traders that are struggling, what would I suggest?
Yeah.
Well, look, you can't be stubborn. And if you notice that, hey, this setup that I've had a lot of success with in the past is no longer working, and I haven't made money trading this setup for a month, and my stats from last year on this setup were excellent, and now I'm looking at the stats over the past month or two and they're horrendous. You can't be stubborn. You have to realize that, okay, that's not working in this environment, but I know that if, just say the war ends or inflation starts coming down, and we, the uptrend resumes, well, okay, you have those setups to fall back on if and when that happens. But for right now, that's not working. So find a trade that is working. Talk to other traders, build your trading network, ask other traders what's working for them, and study that setup. So for instance, we had a big week for earnings. We had Microsoft reported, Facebook reported, of course, Amazon reported, Apple reported. And if you look at these charts and study these charts, you'll notice more so for Facebook and Microsoft that, okay, well, let me see what these stocks do that are gapping up on positive earnings in a bear market. Let me see what they do. Okay, well, they're putting in a resistance level, or they're putting in a top after the number, after the print. And in the morning, they're testing those after hours levels or pre-market highs, and they're failing from them, and they're going red on the day, and they're starting a downtrend. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm noticing that in a bear market, stocks that gap up on good news fail into a resistance level and they trend lower. So okay, I'm starting to see a setup that's working. Now let me take screenshots of this chart, of this pattern. Let me make some notes because I think I'm onto something here. So really that's the kind of process you should be going through if you're struggling. You should be looking for what is working and trying to develop a setup off of that.
No, and that's interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as you get more experience, once you have all these setups, like a book of charts, you can always like go back to them and kind of apply them depending on the market conditions. It's almost like you have different cards to play depending on what type of game you're playing, if that makes any sense.
100%, absolutely.
Super interesting. And so that you just mentioned about taking like printing those charts and kind of putting like a book of charts together leads to my next question, which is more of the mindset of a trader and kind of best practices as well. So Justin, tell me a little bit more about what do you do on a daily basis to improve as a trader?
Yeah, sure. So every morning I wake up about 2 hours before the market opens. I do research. We're lucky because at SMB we get research all market research from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these different investment banks and hedge funds. And we get to read the research and what are the biggest banks and what's the big money thinking on the street. So I like to start my day off with that, see what everyone's thinking. Then I like to look at what stocks are in play this morning, what's gapping up, what had earnings, what's the story behind the earnings. What is setting up? All right, now that I see what's going to be in play this morning, what is setting up technically on the daily? Okay, I see that this one is setting up for a breakdown. There was a support level. Okay, this is going to be one of my top watches. So that's kind of how my morning goes. But throughout the day, I'm continuing to read research. I'm taking notes. I'm writing in my journal about my trading day. After the close, I'm going to the gym every day. I think your physical well-being is super important. I'm talking with other traders every day. What worked for you today? Are you seeing any setups? Are you looking for any setups? Is anything setting up for you tomorrow? I'm doing Zoom reviews with other traders. So something I started doing over the past, I guess, 2 years now is I will go on a Zoom call with new developing traders and I'll review my top trades from the week. And just by doing that, I gain so much value out of that because I'm going into the trades in deep detail, like a bar by bar analysis, and I'm reviewing my best trades from the week. And they're asking me questions. Oh, well, why did you get in here? Would you have added here? Oh, since you got in there, well, where was your stop for that entry? And just by going over trades with other traders, it's just a huge value add. And of course, they're learning and I'm learning what I could do better. Where could I have been bigger? Could I have added here for a momentum lot? So I think just doing a review out loud has been a huge help, and I think it's been one of my it's been a huge contribution to my success.
That's great. Yeah, they say that by teaching, you're learning as well.
Right.
Kind of your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just say another thing is I'm always eager to learn, and I never have the mentality, oh, I'm consistently profitable now, I've made it. I'm actually always scared that I'm not going to be able to adapt to the market, or I'm going to lose, or I'm not going to be able to trade for the next 10 years. Like, I'm playing the 10-year game, right? So if that's the case, you want to always be open-minded and you always want to be willing to learn. So, I'm constantly reading books about trading and psychology, and I'm constantly listening to different trading podcasts and watching YouTube videos. So I'm always trying to learn something, and I'm always staying open-minded. I think that's huge as a trader.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're playing the long-term game, which sounds really a wise thing to do. And so around you in the firm, you see you see a lot of the best traders out there. What are some of the best practices that you like? One of some of the best practices that kind of pop into your mind that you see like other great traders doing as well?
Yeah, so something that I notice all the successful traders on the desk do is they all collaborate with each other. And like I said, they're always trying to learn and adapt to new markets and develop new edges in the market. And they're staying open-minded.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we're starting to run out a little bit out of time. So to wrap it up, like what word of advice do you have for developing traders or those traders having a hard time with this new market conditions, or where with this changing market conditions?
Yeah, so my biggest word of advice for new traders would be don't lose more money than you have the ability to make, and just understand that the whole process from consistently losing money to being flat to consistently profitable, and then going one step further and doubling your size, tripling your size, and sizing up. Um, the process it's a slow process, and I would just say that trading is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're not going to be driving a Lamborghini in a year for the most case. So yeah, so just understand that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and your focus the first year or so it should be finding out what you do well and trying to build your business. The first year, it's not about the money at all. So your risk limits should be very low, and you should not be blowing out your account or taking huge losses. You should really be risking the minimum amount per trade until you find a system or an edge that works for you. Then you can start sizing things up. So yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Start small until you start to see some consistency.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And before we wrap it up, adjusting like how long in average would you say it takes at in a prop firm like yours, when which you have like all the resources and all, the network and the mentors, like how long it's the average until a beginner trader, a newbie trader starts becoming consistently profitable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would just say that it's different for everyone. I've seen some traders become consistent in 6 months, and then I've seen some other traders where it took them a long time, like a year and a half. So I would say everyone's different, but really by a year and a half, you should have you should know you're going to be able to do it as a trade, as a career, a full-time job.
Yeah, and that's with like I previously mentioned, with all the resources and all the education and everything, like on your side. I can imagine that
Exactly.
as a retail, it's probably going to take you way more than that if you ever make it as a retail.
Yeah, but like I said, everyone's different.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Justin, that's being really valuable. And where can listeners hear a little bit more from you?
Yeah, so you could follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is, let me just double check my Twitter handle here. It's at Spero Trades. So that's Spero Trades.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to include that in the description. I did mention listeners, but in this case, it's listeners and viewers. So no, yeah, just saying thank you so much. It's been a great conversation with you. I really enjoy it, and we hope to see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Take care, Justin.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Tradervue Conversations. If you really enjoyed our content, please support us by giving us a thumbs up, sharing, and subscribing.